Welcome back to Drilling Deeper, episode 17, here in the Cleveland office of Pitt & Quarry. We're going to be talking about cloud technology, e-ticketing, work zone safety, and kind of a whole lot more right on tap. But first, let's introduce Jack Kopanski, our managing editor. I'm Kevin Yanik, of course, the editor-in-chief of Pitt & Quarry, and maybe a word from our sponsor, Jack, to get us going.
Yeah, we'll start off with that. We're going to thank Syntron for sponsoring our episode today. With more than 140 years of bulk material handling experience, Syntron Material Handling is a recognized industry leader that provides innovative engineering solution, high-performance products, and superior customer service. Syntron offers solutions in conveying, feeding, screening, elevating, vibratory flow aids, and mining controls of bulk products. For more information, visit syntronmh.com. Thank you to Syntron for sponsoring this episode. Kevin, how are we doing today?
Doing pretty well. Almost summer. I guess officially it doesn't start till June 20th, whenever the summer solstice is.
Yeah, one of those days.
Yeah, but
sure feels like summer's in full bore in the office today.
That's for sure. It's a little hot in the IMG building here in downtown Cleveland, but our readers, they're out in the heat too. They're putting rock on the ground, and it's been a pretty good first half of the year overall for our readers, for agri producers, and we talk a lot about technology, equipment and technology on the show, and we have a very technology-focused episode today of Drilling Deeper as we've got a couple of guests from technology-oriented companies, one being Command Alkon. We've got Michael Hoagland, an interview on tap that, Jack, you did. And we also have, as a guest, Michael Gallant from HaulHub. He'll be the second half of today's podcast. And, as I said, we talk about technology a lot. We're kind of at an inflection point, I would argue, and as I've done some recent interviews, I feel like that's kind of been a theme of some of the conversations I've had with producers and dealers, because we're currently putting out our July dealer issue at Pitt & Quarry. We're at this inflection point for what the future of the industry is going to look like. We've talked about the last 3 to 6 years about digitalization and how that's becoming more commonplace in aggregate operations, and not everybody's necessarily transitioned to that point, but the interviews that we're going to play here today that we captured at Ag One, and again, they were both Jack Kopanski's interviews with the two Michaels at Command Alkon and HaulHub. They're really going to talk about kind of where we are, what the opportunities are that are ahead, because there really is a lot that our readers can bite off and chew and apply to their operations. But we look forward to kind of sharing their insights, and hopefully, if you haven't really dived in fully to e-ticketing and if you're not up to speed with what's happening with DOTs at different state levels, there's a lot that we have to share with you today. And Jack, maybe to kick off our first interview, you can provide a little background about your interview with the Michael at Command Alkon.
Yeah, pair of Michaels talking technology here today. A couple really good interviews. I think one of the things that stuck out to me most about both of them was that they are two topics that I think we've heard about a fair extent: cloud technology and e-ticketing. HaulHub goes a little bit, beyond the e-ticketing, and you'll hear about that in Michael Gallant's interview. But I think the thing that, in listening back to these interviews to prep for this episode, that kind of stuck out to me was that it goes so much deeper than what you might hear or see on face value with cloud technology or e-ticketing, that it's like, you kind of know what it's about, but at the same time, there's these ripple effects that these technologies are having for operations, and the benefits that they provide go far beyond what sort of, in my case, sort of the layman might think of, again, cloud technology or e-ticketing. So I think, like you said, a couple of very interesting insights into these topics. So, but yeah, starting off with Michael Hoagland of Command Alkon, they are digging into cloud technology, showing how it's benefiting producers in real time, and with the ability to access it from anywhere. They're incorporating newer technologies to help attract a younger workforce. That's sort of one of those ripple effects that you're going to hear a little bit more about, speeding up knowledge transfers from the older generation to the newer generation, and also hits a little bit on using automation and AI to help producers make real-time informed decisions. So again, a lot of good info here. Mike Hoagland is one of the many people in this industry that are far smarter than I will probably ever be. So without further ado, I'm going to stop trying to explain what he can say a lot better. Let's go to Mike Hoagland of Command Alkon. one of the things Command Alkon is focusing on at the show this year is sort of the cloud technology you guys are working on. Obviously, data has never been more important. It seems to get more important by the day almost. So can you just talk a little bit about what you guys are working on at Command Alkon and how you guys are utilizing the cloud?
Sure thing. Yeah, so about 3 years ago, we made our journey to the cloud. We started by building the platform. So basically think of it like as you're building a house, we built the foundation of the environment. We then launched our dispatch solution for ReadyMix, and now that that has hit the market and has been accepted with great success, we're making the journey into aggregate and asphalt, and we aim to have that released by the end of 24, beginning of 2025.
Excellent. So in an aggregate setting, how how does Command Alkon's technology work to benefit an aggregate user?
Yeah, so what we plan to do is use IoT devices or Internet of Things devices that we tie to the physical, let's say hardware at the location, like the physical scale. If you have RFID readers or the front end loader, if you do overhead loadout, we're going to tie to the plant with IoT devices, and then the software will be accessed from the cloud.
Gotcha. What have you been hearing from customers or potential customers as far as their demand or their want or need for this data and information? Again, we've heard from so many people that are implementing these types of softwares to be able to control things from your phone, to be able to control whether it's blasting, do it from miles away and do it instantly. What are you hearing and obviously we know why this is becoming important. People want to know what's going on, but just what is driving this such intense demand for this kind of stuff?
There's multiple requirements. One is just the ease of accessibility. Like you said, being able to access it from your phone or from your iPad or from Panama City Beach,
right,
if you happen to be at the beach, to actually leverage that data, be able to perform your role and do it in a time-efficient manner. But the other thing that what we're seeing in the industry is, look, there's a turnover, right? Some of the workforce is aging out, so we have to bring new talent into the industry. And when you have on-premises solutions that look like they were developed in the 1980s or 1990s, that doesn't set well with the younger generation. They want to see current technology. They want to be able to access it from their phone, so we have to appeal to the new generation from a technology stack perspective. So that's the other thing that we're seeing. And then third, I would say that with the current technology available today, machine learning and artificial intelligence is going to play such a heavy role in what we do as an industry.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that younger generation, and I'm sure that has to be sort of an exciting prospect for Command Alkon, that the people that are coming up now are, my age or younger, and we grew up with phones in our hands. We grew up knowing different types of software and knowing, it's kind of the joke now that, my dad tries to use a Fire Stick, and he's like, oh, do we have to pay for the Fire Stick? Do we have Netflix? Do we have Hulu?
Right.
And I'm like, how your phone has apps? The Fire Stick has apps.
That's right.
I'm sure that has to be an exciting prospect that the generation coming up is so familiar with this type of technology, and it probably is very appealing to them that they'll be able to do this stuff at a push of a button.
Absolutely. And then with the technology alongside that, when you weigh in machine learning and AI, then it's going to help speed up that knowledge transfer from the people who are aging, like myself, to the up-and-comers like yourself.
Right.
So we can do that knowledge transfer.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned AI, and that's obviously such a hot button topic,
Yeah.
and I know even in our parent company, we're developing committees. We're trying to find what is the home for this? How is this going to work? And I'm sure that's something Command Alkon has put more than enough thought into. Just so where are you kind of seeing AI as a potential home? Where are you seeing as a potential fit for Command Alkon and for your customers?
Yeah, we're seeing it through the entire quote to cash process of your business. So if you think quoting, when you're quoting materials, having the ability to dive into that customer and actually perform a customer scorecard, so to speak. What are their ordering habits? What are their pricing habits? How often do they do they call for orders and cancel? How often do they change? How often do our costs increase, and where do our costs come from? And being able to leverage that technology to pull in and actually produce an accurate and timely quote. That's one aspect from the quoting. When you move into a delivery perspective, what are my hauling costs? I have haulers scattered throughout the region in real time, because AI and machine learning can plow through massive amounts of data that the human and current on-premises technology just don't have access to. So leverage hauling costs, leverage the plant operating times, material cost, and ordering habits, and then weigh that against current trend or what's happening currently, like weather conditions, is the crew readiness, right. Traffic conditions, real-time traffic conditions, etc. So by being able to pull all that information together and make a real-time split decision, it does nothing but help everybody.
Right. With AI, and I know a topic we're hearing a lot about is automation. With some of this new technology and with the way it's, wanting to help and assist these users of aggregates, of these types of construction materials, I'm sure there has to be some kind of fine line there, because ultimately, it feels like this is an industry that you're never going to be able to do it without people, without having someone physically there 100%. To do it. So how have you kept that in mind, and how have you kind of seen the industry keep that in mind, of saying we want to produce something that's going to help people, but we know we're not going to be able to replace them.
People. Yeah. So the way we see leveraging this technology, and to be fair, it's not to replace people.
Right.
It's to bring the information in real time so that our customers, the actual producers, can make a real-time decision, because somebody has to make the decision. Do I take this order from this quarry or this location? Do I use this hauler or this hauler? Somebody has to make the decision. We're just bringing the information to the forefront and then allowing the producers to do just that.
Mm-hmm. So going back a little bit to what you at Command Alkon are working on, kind of looking at the broad picture of it, what is kind of the benefit that a cloud-based infrastructure offers versus, and I apologize if I'm using the wrong terminology, versus maybe a hardwired or a non-cloud-based type of infrastructure?
Well, first of all, ease of use, right? You can access the cloud from anywhere as long as you have a connection to the internet. You're online,
right?
Versus that traditional, what we would call on-premises solution, where you have to actually be tethered or wired to that location, or at least VPN and have a dedicated connection. So ease of accessibility. And the other thing with the cloud is that, in kind of speaking to another challenge that our industry faces, research on AWS indicates that there's a reduction of carbon footprint of at least 80% when you move to a cloud environment versus on-premises solutions.
Wow, so even some sustainability benefits.
Exactly. And then additionally, companies that use the cloud save about 20% annually on their infrastructure costs as well, just maintaining those servers.
That's excellent. Well, Michael, I believe that's all I have for you. Is there anything else you'd like to share or tell our listeners about what Command Alkon or what the industry has going on?
No, I just think two things. One, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it. And two, it's just an exciting time. I mean, traditionally, our industry has been somewhat slow to adopt technology, but I just see that changing. I think 2024, 2025 are just going to be revolutionary when it comes to technology adoption in the construction materials industry. So sit back, hold on, and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, and that I'll tell you that does actually kind of lead me into one more question I have for you. You talk about that the industry maybe sometimes being slow to adopt technology. We've seen that as well, but we've also seen, like you're saying, a lot of willingness and a lot of readiness to adopt new technologies. Sometimes obviously wanting to see it more proven or wanting to maybe wait, but a lot of willingness to kind of be maybe the guinea pig in some cases. What do you think has driven that change of heart in an industry that, in a lot of circumstances is very like, this is how we've done it, this is how we're going to do it, and we're never going to change?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of factors. One, the aging workforce, bringing in that younger generation that would look at a typical mainframe computer and kind of give you that quizzical look like, what the heck is this? Why can't I access this from my phone, my smartphone? So I think just the next generation of workforce is really forcing the industry to adopt technology. And then, you've got Department of Transportation that's finally weighing in and saying, you know what, these paper tickets, that's a thing of the past. We have got to get away from paper. And why wouldn't you? When everything's electronic, everything's at the touch of your finger, why would you take that piece of paper, print it, to rekey it into your system, to then export it and rekey it into another system? You're digitizing, undigitizing, and redigitizing information multiple times when it's just, it's pointless.
Thanks again to Mike Hoagland of Command Alkon for sitting down with us, talking a little bit about what they have going on. Like I said, a lot of interesting insights into something that, again, on face value can be sort of seen as maybe very simple, or, you have the understanding we all have cloud on our phones, we do different things with the cloud in our day-to-day life, but seeing and hearing about how it can help and impact an aggregate operation was I think really beneficial. And, I don't know about you, Kevin, but I think one of the things that stuck out most to me was the way that this technology is being used to kind of attract that younger generation, where one of the things that stuck out to me is, he said, when you have solutions that look like they're made in the 80s or 90s, it doesn't sit well with the younger generation. They don't want to be coming into floppy disks and, all this other stuff. We then don't want to be coming into, as we're going to hear about in a second, paper tickets. Was there anything that stuck out to you about what Mike had to say?
Yeah, that component does, because if we don't start to bring these technologies into the businesses, we're not going to have the people around the businesses to support them. This is just the way things are going. And I also think, the customers in a large part are really driving the use of this. If you're not on par with where your customers are at, whether it's the DOT or somebody else, private construction company, you're falling behind. You're becoming irrelevant. You're becoming the dinosaur or the fossil, so to speak. I think the other thing that is an opportunity that people understand, but maybe we're just struggling to kind of get our feet wet, fully dive into it, is we can shore up our processes, all sorts of processes, make things more efficient. I think it comes down to efficiency at the end of the day, and that's kind of what businesses separate themselves on, like who can do things best from an efficiency standpoint, whether that's your hauling costs, your plant operation times, your material costs. If I can do it a little bit better than you, if I can do it a little bit more cost efficiently than you, that's going to separate me as company, Yanik Quarry, for example, from Kopanski Quarry. So, there's a lot of opportunity there. Michael walked us through a lot of what's out there to be tapped into, and we appreciate him sharing his expertise with us earlier this year.
Yeah, I hear Kopanski Quarry is on tap for a really big second half of 2024, so don't count them out there. There's a lot of rock to be crushed here in the next 6 months for Kopanski Quarry. Yanik Quarry's in trouble. Again, another thanks to Michael. He hit on near the end of our conversation, talked a little bit about how the DOTs are finally weighing in and saying paper tickets are a thing of the past. Everything's going electronic. That kind of leads in perfectly to our next interview. Mike Gallant of HaulHub. He got into the e-ticketing front with HaulHub, obviously an e-ticketing service. They're also working on work zone safety. He also hit a little bit near the end of our conversation about how artificial intelligence and augmented reality are kind of making their way into construction. An interesting conversation I had here with Michael Gallant. It kind of went in a way that I didn't necessarily see it going, but I think it was a lot of beneficial information, seeing what HaulHub is doing and what they're trying to do with informing the public with real-time construction sites, when they're up, when they're working, how to maybe detour people around, and just basically encouraging people to be more aware and providing this data to try to make the public more aware of construction sites, to limit, workplace incidents and work site incidents. They've done a lot already, and it seems like they have a long way to go. So we will hand it over now to Michael Gallant with HaulHub Technology. I know we've talked a little bit at the show about what HaulHub's working on now. You kind of mentioned right here and also earlier in the show that, kind of sort of that progression that HaulHub's had. I know you mentioned now starting in kind of like the fleet management system or fleet management a little bit, and then moving to e-ticketing. And now, you've been telling me so much here at the show about what you guys are working on and combining two massive things that are, talking points in the industry right now, data and safety. So can you tell us a little bit about what HaulHub has going on?
Sure, I'd add a third bucket to that too with workforce development.
Yes.
So, with the e-ticketing lens, right, you have several DOT officials, no different here with the producers trying to find that next generation of talent. Being able to deploy tools that make sense. I am unfortunately an elder millennial now, so it's painful to actually say that, but you have people younger than me, and then of course Gen Z that have kind of walked out of the womb with an iPad or an iPhone in their hands. How does it work from a workforce development standpoint that we're an industry that really is thinking and being intentional with deploying technology by telling them to stand on the back of a paver and mark a paper ticket? So it starts there. Getting back to what you asked about with work zone safety, e-ticketing data provides a wealth of information, but critically it also is going to inform whether or not a job site is active. So we are using that right now with a federal grant from Federal Highway Administration called Advanced Digital Construction Management. Those grants were a part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Last year they deployed about 34 million. I think there were 10 applicants. Delaware DOT, which was our first state helping deploy e-ticketing, put together this comprehensive application that leverages not only e-ticketing data, but the activity on the job site from the inspector confirming delivery of those tickets and connecting the machines that are on that job site. So you have this cohesive ecosystem where all of these things are working in concert with one another. I don't want to get too into the weeds. There are some really nerdy technology standards that allow for the interoperability of this data. But what it means for everyone in this convention hall right now is that we're trying to make construction job sites safer. So you have the e-ticketing data. These trucks are going to a certain project. Our thesis is that job site's probably going to be active for about an hour, depending on how many trucks are being sent out. Then you have the inspector on the job site confirming delivery of that material, and then you have the activity of the machines. So from the modems that are attached to the paver, the miller, the roller, you have lat long, whether or not the machine is active. We're then taking all of that and then feeding it to Waze right now to then inform the traveling public, hey, this construction zone's active. And the first ever project of this type, we did it in Delaware last year. This was literally right before the announcement that the job kicked off. And the findings that we were able to obtain from it are profound.
Yeah.
Especially when you have traffic operations, they receive all this planned activity. We can then say, we're showcasing active construction, which is so critical because we're trying to avoid complacency. I'm in Massachusetts. We're going through construction season right now, i.e. also known as spring. And you drive through these construction zones and you're sometimes going to get a flagger or a state trooper or something. But if they're not showcasing active construction, people might hey, wasn't active for the last week. I'm not worried about it now, but there are people there increasing the possibility of a work zone intrusion.
Yeah, and this sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this sounds like a pretty comprehensive sort of start to finish system. Starting with the e-ticketing, going through getting them into the construction zone, and when they finish their job, sort of saying, all right, it's good to go, ready to roll, and that that sounds like sort of a win-win-win situation there.
Yeah, we have a moral obligation, right? Like, we're trying to protect everybody, and with distracted driving, drowsy driving, drunk driving, and you have all this technology inside the vehicle that can better inform the driver. Let's avoid, I-95 for this stretch because there is construction underway. Moving people around these job sites is ideally the way we want to go, or if you're going to have to drive through it, let's slow down. And, the basis of e-ticketing isn't the data. The basis of e-ticketing is safety. There were so many stories, and what really kicked off the e-ticketing initiative back in 2015 in Iowa was because a mixer truck slipped off its braking system and killed an inspector. Credit to Greg Mulder. He's the head of the Iowa Ready Mix Concrete Association now, but he was the inspector to really get this going. And it took a while to get to this point where we are right now in 2024, but using that overarching theme of safety, we can now use all of this data to better inform the traveling public. This is what's going on our roads.
Yeah. So what have you been seeing? I know you mentioned a few states there: Delaware, Iowa, Boston, or Massachusetts, I should say. Some places you've been working with. What have you been seeing or hearing from these state DOTs as far as sort of their readiness or maybe their eagerness to take on these kind of projects, if you will, and start incorporating what HaulHub's doing?
And all it takes is one. Delaware being, kind of the first state, both on their license plate tag and also the first state that joined our effort for e-ticketing. It's showcasing that this can truncate a lot of their current problems, right? Efficiency is important, especially when we're trying to get all this money out as attached to the bipartisan infrastructure law. We have so many projects coming through the pipeline. There's only so many jobs we can do at any one given moment. And by leveraging technology, we can hopefully help mitigate some of these problems and pitfalls that they're currently experiencing. So starting in 2021, Delaware was the first state to move forward. Now here in 2024, we, HaulHub, have signed up, I think, 37 agencies of all sizes across, mostly DOTs, but City of Boston, City of Chicago, City of LA. There's a county in North Dakota now that's really moving forward with this. And once you get that paradigm open, that Pandora's box, if you will, the dominoes just start falling.
Yeah.
And I think that is really the way to make this work cohesively, because you're getting these contractors buy-in. E-ticketing is a very common action problem. Everyone understands the pain points of that. So once you open that door and say, okay, we can move away from the paper ticket, that can really open up everyone's hearts and minds about what's possible for construction. And the connected job site with Delaware, it's really just showcasing that we are an innovative company that can quickly deploy tools that the industry has desperately needed for a long time.
Yeah, and we've talked to some people here at the show, and one thing that comes up so much is, and especially I think is clear with that connected job site you're talking about, is just the need for data 5 minutes ago. It's like, I don't want it now, I want it 5 minutes ago.
Exactly.
So, and I remember you showed me on the phone how you were able to kind of set a marked area for a job site and said, as soon as someone, drives into this area, they're going to get that alert on Waze or on whatever, app they're using. And again, obviously, like you mentioned, the basis of it is safety that I think can't go unmentioned. But I got to be honest, that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it's allowing you to, on the fly, create a work zone. So let me back up. Anytime, an inspector, depending on what phone they might have, issued by the agency, some cases their personal phone, we are, creating an app they can go in the App Store and download. That's really the only time you'd ever know HaulHub had created it. They log in with their regular email, and then boom, you're assigned your certain level. So you have the inspector with their 4 or 5 jobs that they're overseeing in District 1 in Iowa, or you're a super user where you can see the entire state, like some e-construction or state construction materials engineers will have access to. And, we're not too different than Instagram, where you have the little storyboards with the circles. We do the same thing with work zones, with yield reporting, with samples, testing, all that stuff. And the work zone, as you mentioned, click on that, boom, you have the map of the region that you're located, geolocated to the job site. You can quickly draw out how you want to define your work zone. And the map I showed you was a project in Delaware where this inspector wanted to showcase or alert the traveling public that east, west, north, and south, anytime they cross that road work, they would be notified that there's construction taking place.
Yeah, so in the time that you guys have been working on this, what have you, or what has HaulHub sort of been seeing or hearing as far as how it is improving safety? What are you hearing from, again, some of those associations, organizations, DOTs, where, on whatever level you're working on, as far as how this is, working to improve safety?
I mean, everyone's thirsty for technology that can be quickly deployed. I think that goes without saying, but more importantly, as we have this moral obligation to try and protect all these workers on the job site to keep America competitive and update our roads and bridges. We're talking at this with the backdrop of the Francis Scott Key Bridge that just happened recently, right? Granted, that's not directly related to our work, but nonetheless, it shows the importance of infrastructure and how that is the vein system that keeps this country operational. But they're resoundingly saying we want to do this.
Right.
We have DOT officials that have seen what we've done with the first round of advanced digital construction management grants, and they're getting involved. They're reaching out to us and saying, what can we do to apply for this? Obviously super competitive, we can't promise anything, but there's extreme interest in trying to help do this in their state too, because again, it all it takes is one. Delaware kind of taking that first bite at the apple is showcasing what's possible.
Yeah, definitely. Where do you see, and again, I know you are sort of actively working on this, so not to put the cart before the horse necessarily, but where do you see this technology going? How does it grow from here? Where do you how does this continue to grow and get better, and what sort of does the future hold for this kind of technology?
Future's limitless, really. I mean, you can talk about Vision Pro. I'm sure you've seen that release from Apple where you can kind of do this augmented reality. You could theoretically see a future where you're being able to visualize the plan and the design in real time versus what you're actually doing on the construction job site. Iowa, Matt Miller, who's kind of a visionary in this space, he has shown in several presentations augmented reality where you can see, okay, this is what we're looking at, here's what's going on underneath the road where I can, you're not guessing where the pipes and wires are, you know exactly where they are. That's a grand vision long term. What we're doing beyond the safety component is now starting to ingest environmental product declarations, obviously a very hot topic here at Ag 1, World of Asphalt, and a huge education effort. We want to make this simple. Let's keep the EPD attached to the ticket. You know where the trucks are coming from, you know where they're going to go on the job site, ingesting all of that machine activity. You can figure out what's going on in terms of a carbon footprint level on the job site, which is something that's never been done before. And our argument is you can't reduce what you can't measure, and that's just kind of starting off where we want to go. We're not getting in the way of determining what federal highway or ADOT wants to determine how to curb those carbon footprints, but we want to show them the way that it's simple and easy to figure out. Another component to that is digital inspection. Workforce challenges are abundant. Everyone knows that. But by ingesting all of this into a cohesive ecosystem, you can take that data from a machine, understand the slope, temperature. You can obviously layer in things like thermal profiling and intelligent compaction to get a real-time understanding of what the product you're asking for is looking like in real time.
Right.
And I think it's important to mention, too, artificial intelligence.
Of course.
It's, there's been several breakout sessions here. We're already using that inside our eDOT platform to be able to create daily work reports. It's something that already takes place. Many DOTs already use them. But you have all this data that's coming through, we're ingesting into our system. We can create it on the fly. It's something we're doing through OpenAI with ChatGPT. You can, on the desktop version, when you're back at the office, quickly generate a report. It will showcase the weather. It will showcase any variances in the material. We're going to start leveraging traffic into that. So you can see that, okay, not only are we broadcasting construction activity, the actual traffic is lower as a result of that activity being broadcast. There's so many important things that are going on, and it's hard to, quickly deploy all these tools in a way that makes sense, because time is of the essence, let's be clear. But the future for technology on the job site is, I think we look back 5 years from now, we're going to be like, we were in the Stone Age, literally in 2024.
All right. Thanks again to Michael Gallant of HaulHub for joining us. Another guy that you kind of hear him talk, and I remember during the interview, I'm sitting there, and this guy is talking all this stuff at such a high level that I'm sitting there, and I'm like, yeah, 100%. Just a guy that's obviously super smart. I really knows what he's talking about. And I think one of the things that stuck out most to me, again, like we mentioned before the interview, sort of that idea of being able to provide this real-time data in an app like Waze, saying, here's where a construction zone is. It's active. There are people working in there now, showing maybe a different route or telling drivers to slow down. And he really makes the point of, there's so much technology in a car now that can help people make informed decisions. And this is just another thing that hopefully is going to sort of boom out of that. And, he kind of had a quote here or a couple paraphrases where he talked about, generations now are walking out of the womb with an iPhone or iPad in their hands. And how can companies say they're being intentional with how they're deploying technology when they still tell people to stand on the back of a paver and mark a paper ticket? So
it's unacceptable
today,
it is, right?
Yeah. And I think the other thing that stuck out is he talks about how the basis of e-ticketing, as much data as there can be gathered from e-ticketing, it's not about data, it's about the safety. Is that there's fewer people put in harm's way or fewer people being around powered haulage. And I know, we've heard a ton about powered haulage from MSHA and fatality numbers recently. So minimizing those potential
incidents.
Yeah, thank you. Is a huge part of it. What did you take away from what Mike Gallant had to say?
He used the phrase cohesive ecosystem, trying to marry different parts of the value chain or the supply chain together. In our world, we're very much centered around crushed stone, sand, and gravel, or the aggregates component of our value chain. I mean, and we serve downstream. We've got customers that are our readers' customers are the ones buying and putting the materials to use. So I think HaulHub, as an example, they're trying to marry together these different entities and create this environment, this data environment that kind of houses all this different information. That's a good thing. I had never really thought about e-ticketing from a safety standpoint, but you do hear reports probably every spring, every summer when road construction season gets underway. People probably because they're on their phones using technology, they're just blowing through these road construction zones, and people are getting hurt, people are getting killed. It's not a good thing. So if we can take the technology and better inform people, as Michael kind of described or alluded to during the interview, and empower people about where these zones are, that's a good thing. It doesn't necessarily have a direct impact, I'd say, on the aggregates guys, or at least maybe I'm not seeing that, but I think it all goes hand in hand in creating what Michael described as this cohesive ecosystem that everybody lives and operates through.
Yeah, 100%. And, I think if you look at the numbers in the interview, Michael obviously mentioned that in 2021, Delaware was the first state to kind of start adopting this technology that HaulHub's putting out. And at least dating back to March when we had our interview, HaulHub has 37 agencies of all sizes signed up, whether it's state DOTs, cities, counties. And the way he put it is that once you kind of open Pandora's box, the dominoes start falling. So it seems like the more and more these agencies are finding out about this technology and how they can incorporate it and how they can make it work for them and make it safer for construction workers, safer for the general public, more informative. It seems like it's only going to go up from here. So definitely an interesting look at, again, something that, I know we obviously talk about, but maybe don't necessarily see sort of the behind the scenes type of stuff like this. So a great conversation there. We've obviously been busy. You mentioned at the start of the episode our dealer issue coming out here soon. I know you've been insanely busy trying to get everything done for the dealer issue and market reference guide. How's that been? Getting this issue put together so far.
It's been busy. We found time to get in here and get episode 17 shot for you. But the dealer issue is one that I always look forward to every year. It's actually kind of the brainchild of both of our bosses, our publisher Rob Fulop. 7 years ago. This is the 7th dealer issue that's going to be coming out here in July, so look for that. Been doing some interviews that are going to lead to some stories. One, I'm kind of exploring the concept of the mega dealer. We talk about producers all the time. M&A producers are getting so much larger, more corporate in nature, bigger in size, covering bigger territories. Well, at the end of the day, I mean, as the producers are getting bigger, the dealers are getting bigger too. So if you pick up your July issue of Pit and Core here in the next week or two, you can read about the trend there and kind of why that's happened, alongside producers. Did an interview with Ian Edwards and Matt Dibble, Ian with Major and Matt with Dibble Equipment. Jack, you were at the Young Leaders SGA meeting earlier this year, and Ian approached us about, kind of doing a case study as an example on how a manufacturer and a dealer comes together. And, you and I are reporting and writing up a lot of news, X manufacturer signs Y dealer. And I never, in my time with the magazine really got into, how did they come together? I mean, how much time is elapsed between the first meeting or the introduction and signing on the dotted line and coming to terms with each other? So put a story together. I was really excited to talk to those guys. They offered a lot of things that I didn't really expect to hear in terms of, how a manufacturer and a dealer can ultimately come together. It was kind of a cool story. So you can look for that as well.
One thing I'll say in teasing that story, I guess two things. One, it is a great story. I think it, I was telling you after I was kind of looking over it as we were editing pages, getting ready for this edition. I think it really did kind of provide that inside look that maybe not a lot of people know about as far as how this sort of manufacturer dealer relationship comes along. And I think it, getting insights from both sides was, I think, very valuable. And number two, for our readers, you might be hearing wedding bells when you read this article, because as it's put in the story, and you'll sort of understand more when you read it. Manufacturer and dealer relationships can be a lot like a marriage, and I know there were some times that was alluded to in the story, and I got a big kick out of that. And I think it's a fitting comparison when you kind of see how this partnership between Major and Dibble came together. So. A lot of good stuff coming in this dealer issue for sure.
When you know.
That's right.
Right. Well, I'm going to the Texas meeting here. By the time we put that out, I will have been at the Texas Aggregates and Concrete Association meeting. Be the first time we'll be down there. Jack, we continue to hear really amazing things about that show, and we make it a priority at the magazine to get to as many of the state association annual meetings as we can. And there's a lot of associations out there. Not every state has an aggregates specific group. Many do, and we haven't been to Texas, which is kind of hard to believe because that meeting by this time has grown to about 600-700 plus people, as I understand it. And we've been to some pretty sizable state shows like Georgia, and I was at Ohio last year. I think they had 600 plus. I'm probably putting your numbers short, Pat Jackman, if you're listening. But yeah, I mean, it's really great to see what's happening at the state level with a lot of these different state organizations, and I'm excited to see how the Texas meeting plays out.
Yeah, those are definitely some of the relationships that I know, at least speaking for myself, that I think have been some of the most valuable that we've been able to sort of cultivate those state execs, whether it be, you mentioned Georgia, Jeff Wansley, South Carolina, Jessica Palmer, hopefully now TACA with Josh Leftwich. Hopefully that's going to be something where we can kind of cultivate a good working relationship with them. And like you said, the show every year, whether we're at an Ag One, a Con Expo, or even when we were just recently at Young Leaders or wherever we're going, it sounds like we're hearing about TACA at some point, whether it's their annual meeting or some sort of secondary, tertiary meeting they have going on. So very excited for you and Dino to get down there. Excited to hear what the feedback is, and hopefully that becomes a regular stop for us.
Yeah, I expect it probably will be, whether it's every year or in some form or fashion, for sure. Well, Jack, another episode down. We'll have another one in a couple of weeks here, possibly with some dealer-oriented content for you, as again we putting out our dealer issue here in the month of July soon. So for Jack Kopanski, I'm Kevin Yanik. Thanks for listening.
See you.